it's an interesting logistical challenge to try to move a baseball team from one state to another. So this year I shouldn't gloss over the game we played in Pennsylvania, which was a charity game so really we played in Arizona, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, which you were at, and you got to experience everything firsthand and really be our guy on the ground. You made it happen, and thank you for that. And then we played New York, and then we played Massachusetts. So I don't know how to do math, but I think that's like 30 states.
That was John Fitzgerald, founder of the Irish American Baseball Society, talking about the successful summer the Irish Wolfhounds had in 2025. Hello, and welcome to episode 121 of the Irish Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Becker. John Fitzgerald will be my guest on the show today, and it will be a long one. We need to discuss everything that happened with the Irish American Baseball Society over a busy summer. With that in mind, let's get right into it. Thanks for being here, John.
Hey, Rick. Happy to be here.
So there has been a lot going on with the Irish American Baseball Society over the past few months, and I thought that today would be a really great episode to sort of recap some of that stuff, especially as we start getting into the point now where we start turning our focus to college football and our fantasy football drafts and a big summer of baseball and the Irish American Baseball Society. So I thought doing a recap on that would be really good right now. And I wanted to start off with the Irish Wolfhounds. It was a really, really successful summer and spring for the Irish Wolfhounds. They got to play some real great competition. They got to play in some really great venues. So why don't you talk about that a little?
Yeah, and happy to discuss all of it. It has been kind of it's been a lot of stuff happening. But the Wolfhounds, yeah, we were able to play Team Germany this year, which that happened in February, right before Germany played in the WBC qualifiers. And I can't. It's hard to really put into words how important that was to the guys on the field and also to the Wolfhounds concept, because Germany's they've just got a great program. They've built their domestic program in a way that helps them develop players. We've used Germany as an example of where we think Ireland can and should be going domestically, and turned out Germany was great, just great people in their program, and so we were able to play them and establish that our guys can play on the same field as Germany. And we were able to open it up to some local guest players that turned out to be fabulous people and solid baseball players. And really the whole concept of the Wolfhounds, of the society, really resonated with them. We got a few new members out of those guest players, and people that were either they're Irish or they don't qualify for the WBC, but they're Irish American, or a couple of them weren't Irish at all, but they just found it really, really interesting and wanted to be a part of it. So that whole trip was just a lot of planning, a lot of hard work. We had Joe McEwen come in and manage the team. Things went great. We were real happy with it, and then fast forward to I guess June, and we picked up where we left off last summer, and we played the NYPD, the FDNY, and then we got to go up to Brockton in Massachusetts, which again is another big deal for us because we've been trying to get to Massachusetts for a couple of years, and it's an interesting logistical challenge to try to move a baseball team from one state to another. So this year I shouldn't gloss over the game we played in Pennsylvania, which was a charity game so really we played in Arizona, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, which you were at, and you got to experience everything firsthand and really be our guy on the ground. You made it happen, and thank you for that. And then we played New York, and then we played Massachusetts. So I don't know how to do math, but I think that's like 30 states.
It was definitely a busy summer, and when you mentioned the game against Germany, that was in the Tucson area, which was where they were going to be playing those WBC qualifiers. So not only did they help us being competition for the Wolfhounds and taking us seriously, but we actually got to help them gear up for the WBC qualifiers. So it was definitely I scratch your back, you scratch mine kind of situation that it seems like both sides really appreciated.
Yeah, when we initially approached Germany, they were very nice about telling us that there was no way we were going to take the field with them because Ireland is just not simply not good enough, and so we had to explain to them what the whole concept of the Wolfhounds was, and they were like, wow, we think you guys would give us a good game, and we actually would really like to play you. Um, and we actually we had a shot. We really had a shot to beat them both games we played, but it didn't really matter. We had one bad inning. I think we were up. People got were concerned when we didn't post the scores, but we decided we weren't going to post the scores either way. We really didn't know what was going to happen going in. When Joe McEwing walked onto the field, he sent me a text message, and he was just like, "Germany looks really, really good," and then I was like, "Oh, well, we tried, everything told us that we had the guys and we were going to be able to compete. And you know what, if we get killed, we get killed. That's fine." What happened was we went up 9-2. And I think in the sixth inning, there was one of our guest pitchers had an arm problem, but he didn't really want to say anything because he was an Irish American kid who's not WBC eligible, but he's a former pro pitcher, really wanted to impress everybody, so he didn't say anything. And right before he got brought into the game, he was like, he realized his arm was like not going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. So we had bases loaded, and now we had no pitcher, and so the next guy had to warm up on the fly, and we ended up losing 15-9. So, we established that we could play on the same field as Germany. I mean, after that inning, I think it was neck and neck. Nobody scored the rest of the game. It was like 3 or 4 more innings. Next day, we lost 6-3, and I think we lost with 2 guys on and the tying run at the plate. So, not bad for, we brought 7 or 8 guys, and then we had guest players, many of them meeting our guys for the first time. Joe McEwing had no idea what we had until halfway through game 1. I briefed them as well as we could, but again, our guest players were new to me too. So given all of that, I mean, we proved, that we can hang with one of the best programs in Europe. And if we had, full complement of our 50 guys to choose from, I'm sure we could have brought some great pitching, and we could have really given Germany a run. It had the games counted, and we had the opportunity to bring a full squad. So, but all that being said, it was just, it was great. It was great to be able to organize that with the WBC. The people that I was on the phone with planning this were the people that were putting together, the stadium crew that were putting together the actual World Baseball Classic qualifiers. And as soon as, it was like 3 or 4 days after our guys all went home, we all got to watch Germany play against China and against, I think it was Colombia and Brazil. And these were the same players that we went up against, Donald Lutz, the other names escape me, but like Andre Agassi's nephew. These were people that we had just played against, and we showed that we could hang with them. And so it meant a lot to me. It meant a lot, I think, to Joe McEwing and all the players, Dave Gallagher, Connor Santiani. It just was, it was a really great experience. And again, Team Germany was just great. They, as far as like, just dealing with them, like we told them like, hey, it's going to be an extra like $700 charge if we use the clubhouse. Like, would you guys mind if, after our second game, if could we use your clubhouse so they can get their flights home? Because some guys are going straight from the ballpark to the airport. And without hesitation, they were like, yeah, no problem at all. Like, we've got extra towels. Like, we won't use our clubhouse, so you guys can use it. Like, just, make sure you guys do what you need to do because you're providing us with a service and to make sure we get ready for the tournament. So, it was one of those things where when all this stuff comes together, we have the same kind of camaraderie with the NYPD and the FDNY. It's just like, we're there to have fun. We're there to play baseball, and we're there to kind of, get each other's back.
And when you talk about some of these games, like you talked about the pitcher who just realized he couldn't go in that game. And I think one of the things that I learned by actually attending a Wolfhounds game and watching as the game unfolded is you're putting together a roster of guys for one game. So if you're asking somebody to get on a plane or even to drive a few hours, well, you're going to want to make sure that pitcher gets an inning or two at least if they're putting in that kind of effort to be a part of the team and to show up. And sometimes, I mean, we all know it from watching our favorite Major League Baseball teams. Sometimes one guy coming out of the bullpen might just not have it that day. And it feels like whenever something does go wrong, that seems to be what it is. It's just like one guy coming out of the bullpen maybe doesn't have it, but you also don't want to ask somebody to do this type of commitment and then have them sit on the bench for 9 innings.
Yeah, and that's the same kind of ethos and approach that we took when we started Ireland's under-18 program. You know, and we do the same thing today. We make everybody sign an agreement that says that, you know, there's no guarantee of playing time. You may show up and there'll be none, but we do tell them, like, hey, look, you got to sign this because we don't want someone coming back to us and saying I drove 300 miles and you didn't give me an at bat. But we're going to try to get everybody in the game, and we're going to try to put people in positions and situations where you can succeed. So please let us know how many innings you can throw. Let us know what position you're comfortable in, you know, and baseball players are baseball players. We get guys that fill out our player interest form and say that they play 7 positions. And then we say, look, we don't want to put you in a position that you haven't played in 10 years. Like, just tell us where you really play. And, but the Wolfhounds concept is pretty foreign for a lot of guys because they're like, well, I just figured if I put 7 positions, I'd get in the game. And we say, no, like, we're not going to take 8 first basemen that only play first base. We'll let you know, and maybe you can play with us next time. So we make sure that nobody has an expectation that they're definitely getting playing time. It's not Little League. However, it's kind of like a semi-pro situation. So we really don't want people traveling in from too far unless they've been involved in the program for a few years. Maybe they've played for Team Ireland, or they're definitely WBC eligible. They understand what's going on. They understand what it's all about. If somebody says, hey, I get it, I know, and I can come in from, like, Dave Gallagher has come in from Cleveland to New York several times, but Dave knows the drill. He's played pro ball, he's played on Team Ireland, and he's played for us like 4 or 5 games already. Ryan O'Rourke drives in from the Boston area. So that kind of thing. I think our first game we had Doyle Kane flew in from California. Doyle is a citizen of Ireland and lives in California, plays Division I baseball. And he really wanted to be there for the first game. He hasn't been able to come in since, but he's part of the team. Even though we haven't seen him on the field for 3 years, we know he's part of the program. He's part of the deal. But we want everyone to just be, like, prepared for, you know, contributing in a way that will help the team, but understanding that this isn't a situation where pitcher's going to go 6 innings, or, you know, a hitter's only going to play, a fielder's only going to play the whole game if there's nobody else at that position. We're going to share time, and it really builds camaraderie. You know, we want guys in the dugout for at least a few innings because we want them talking to the coaches and meeting other players and spending some time with them, which they wouldn't have a chance to do if they were on the field the whole game. So it does work out. It is modeled on what we did when we ran the Irish 18U team in 2017 and 2018, because those kids had very little time to practice. I think we had 2 practices in New York. Half the team was not in New York. And then they all ended up in a country that none of them had ever been in. Most of them had never played with each other. They had missed the practices, and nobody was penalized for missing the practices. And then at the end of the week, they were all really good friends. And so that's kind of what we're going for.
And when we talk about the Irish Wolfhounds and the quality of the players that we're putting on these rosters, you know, talking about competing with Germany, and that might not mean anything to the average baseball fan listening to this podcast. They might not know how good Germany is. But the game I attended in New Jersey, Scott Kelly was playing shortstop for the Irish Wolfhounds. And just a couple of weeks later, he got signed by my local minor league baseball team, the Lancaster Stormers of the Atlantic League. And, he's playing pro ball right now and he's doing really
Yeah.
well with them. So, you think about these players and you hear us say, oh, some guys with pro experience, some guys who have college experience. This isn't like, when my father was, in his 40s talking about how he had college experience. Like, these are people who are still doing it in a lot of cases, who are still able to walk right onto a pro field and compete.
Yeah, and we try not to oversell what the guys can do, because we don't want to. It's not that we don't believe that they can do it. We just, everybody's got their own perception of what good baseball is, but we're running guys out there that can play, at a high level. We've had a couple guys, a couple guest players that didn't play college ball because of family circumstances, but they clearly could be, D2 or D3 players. We've had a couple of D2 or D3 players that easily could be D1 guys, and then we've had a bunch of guys this year get signed both in Europe and in the pros. Scott Kelly, Kyle Singer recently got signed, and Garrett Crowley is in the Frontier League pitching for Quebec, and his ERA is like 1.5 or something coming out of the bullpen. And then we got former major leaguers like Ryan O'Rourke. So we really do run the gamut, and that is another way that I think the camaraderie gets built with this club, is that you put all these guys on a team in the dugout. Maybe some of them know each other a little bit, or they played against somebody in college or something like that. But there's no pecking order. Like Ryan O'Rourke shows up and throws an inning, and he's ready for it. He's prepared. That's all he needs to keep his arm in shape. He's not going out there saying, I pitched in the big leagues, I want 4 or 5 innings. He's there, basically after the game giving us notes on other pitchers, like, oh, so and so is going through the citizenship process. This other kid has a great fastball. And he's there almost like a coach. And then we never asked him to be, but I'm sure he'd be a great one. But he's there to see how good Ireland can be, and he's liking what he sees. But also, it's a high enough quality of baseball where we can throw him for an inning, and we know we've got usually 5, 6, or 7 guys in the bullpen that all go an inning or 2 innings themselves, and so it's good baseball. It really is, and these guys are they're quality players, and the Germans, going back to what you said about Germany, they develop domestic players really, really well. We've had some of our guys get signed. Alo Sujak was signed in, I believe, Germany last year. He's in the Czech Republic this year. Joe Cosgrove, who's been a huge part of the team in the last few years, we haven't seen him or Alo this year. Joe's been playing. He got signed by the London Mets, so he's over in England. That actually makes it really tough. I mean, the quality of play is actually such that we lose guys. They get signed in Europe. They get signed in indie ball. And it makes it hard, because those are our best, most experienced players, and we're losing them left and right. But we want that. That's definitely something that I learned back when I made a documentary about independent baseball, and Wally Backman was the manager of the team, and he knew his team was going to lose games if he lost his best players, but he was a proponent of getting guys signed. And at the time, it kind of flew over my head a little bit, but talking to people, I realized that some independent, clubs, they're fine if their guys get signed, but really, they want to win, and Wally certainly wants to win, or wanted to win, at that time, and he had no problem making phone calls, for every player to try to get them signed, and we've done the same. We've tried to work our connections to help guys, get picked up. And I think we've had a small hand in some of the signings, but, the big picture is the more guys get signed and the more guys go on, it further proves the point that Ireland needs to be in the WBC.
And I think sometimes, especially with the independent ball teams and talking about players signing, yes, you lose that player and it might cause you to lose some games in the short term. But I mean, anybody who's followed college sports knows sometimes you get frustrated that the kid leaves early as a junior, and sometimes in basketball after their freshman year. And you get frustrated with that, but you have to realize the more kids you're putting into the NBA draft, the more kids are going to want to come join your program. The more that people are seeing that you're developing players that are at this caliber, the more people are going to want to play with you. And if players are seeing that the Wolfhounds are a good opportunity to stay in shape, to get some innings, to get some at-bats, and that people are taking that level of baseball seriously and they're still signing people, well, that's a huge deal.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
So I want to move away from the Wolfhounds now and move over to the actual island of Ireland, where we have sent a number of coaches and players over to Ireland just this year to coach drills, to coach camps, and to really teach the game of baseball over in Ireland. Why don't you talk about that as well?
This actually ties in with the Wolfhounds a little bit because the first coach we sent over was Joe Cosgrove, and this was before he signed in London. So Joe went. Joe was in Northern Ireland in the middle of February, and he basically ran a new annual youth baseball clinic that we're going to be doing, Portadown area of Northern Ireland. It's a new program. It was partially funded by the Ireland funds, and Joe went out there, ran the program with our partners out there, Healthy Kids. And Healthy Kids is like they provide physical education services to schools. So they're in schools throughout Northern Ireland. Most of their coaches are GAA coaches, and we've trained up some of their coaches to kind of conduct baseball activities as a gym class. But then Joe goes over and he's got that extra level of experience, and so he spent a week there, flew home, then flew to Arizona, played against Team Germany, and then signed with the London Mets. We haven't seen him since, but we're in touch with Joe. But we're looking forward to getting him back stateside, so he can either play with the Wolfhounds or help us as we launch some new youth programs this fall. But so that's kind of how the whole thing started in Ireland this year. And then we've continued to send coaches. We had Darren Murphy, who's a high school coach from California. I believe he was Jason Giambi's high school coach, and a few other guys, Corey Lytle, a couple other people. So very experienced coach, very, very proud of his Irish roots. So he was up in Portadown as well. After that was James Lally and Sean Monahan also went over, and they ran the baseball section of a youth sports camp that Healthy Kids puts on every year. So we have a baseball station at this sports camp. It's multi-sport, and baseball is one of the sports. And so Sean and James, who are both Irish Wolfhounds coaches, went out there. And interestingly, James Lally, I think it was the night before, 2 nights before he flew to Dublin, he was actually on the field for the posthumous induction of Whitey Ford into the Irish American Baseball Hall of Fame, because he, I guess when he was 14 or 15 years old, he wasn't serious about baseball. He was a very serious basketball player. Whitey Ford actually saw him pitch and said, "Hey, you need to be serious about baseball because you can actually pitch really well." And then he went on to pitch at St. John's University. So we're, obviously thrilled that he's part of our program. And so he was on the field for that induction with the Ford family and Sean Clancy. And then he flies to Northern Ireland with Sean Monahan, who's a coach at Nassau Community College in New York. And they ran, a week of baseball camp, and we've got some other coaches going this fall. One of our board members, Chris McKnight, will be out there. He's a former college coach, got a ton of experience, and so what we're trying to do now is build off the success that we've had in the North. We're going to be expanding that program into the Republic of Ireland, and we'd like to send a coach every week. Sometime next year, we'd like to start sending a coach every week. So it could be after the summer. We're not quite sure. There's a lot of logistical issues that we have to kind of figure out, but we've sent so far more coaches so far this year that have gone over, in the past few years combined. So we're just going to continue to build off those successes.
How have we found that the kids are receiving the players? Like, are they just all stoked learning this new game?
Now that's something we've seen for 20 plus years, and we finally kind of taken the lead in sending coaches over and working with healthy kids. But if baseball's introduced to the kids as a fun, sport that they can play, without too much cost or too much commitment, they jump in and they love it. I think where baseball kind of can become problematic is the cost of starting a new sport, or as a kid or family. It's pretty difficult. It's pretty expensive, and if that's kind of like the first introduction a kid has to baseball, well, they'll go do something else. There are other sports they're more familiar with, and there are other sports that are cheaper. Even though soccer can have tons of fees, in Europe, all you really need to play soccer is ball, and everybody knows how to play it. So we kind of approach the game in a little bit of a different way, in that first of all, we introduce it in gym class. We use a lot of kickball, so the kids familiarize themselves with running the bases, and we also use wiffle ball, so the kids can take that kickball and now introduce swinging a bat and throwing a ball. And then we work on the mechanics of throwing and all this stuff. So we kind of scaffold it. Teachers might be familiar with that term. We scaffold it so that we're not saying like, all right, you need, $200 bat, $150 glove, go stand in left field and we'll see you in 2 hours. And that's the way to make a kid want to do something else. And so we don't do it that way. It's all about fun. It's all about getting the kids running the bases and things like that. And when we pitched this approach to healthy kids, they were like, we want to do baseball. Like this is the way we want to teach it. This is how we approach every other sport when we introduce it in physical education classes. So we've been partners with Healthy Kids for about 4 or 5 years now. And we've seen that the kids love it. When Joe Cosgrove was out in February doing, it's called the Baseball Fusion. I think it's going to be an annual thing. We got the feedback we got from that was tremendous. The kids loved it. A lot of times these kids have never thrown a ball. There aren't sports where you throw balls in Ireland. Some of the kids play rounders, and so they have kind of an added, knowledge about how to run the bases and things like that. But no one's ever stopped and talked to these kids about, proper mechanics of how to hit or how to throw. And so that's what guys like Joe Cosgrove and James Lally and Sean Monahan and Chris McKnight can offer them, is like, hey, this is a really fun game, and check this out. You can if you do this, you can hit even better, or you can throw even farther. Sorry. And that's where the kids take like baseball's kind of fun to, hey, you know what? I can actually do this. Like this is actually something I can be good at. And so we try to meet the kids where they are and build from there. But long story short, to answer your question, the kids seem to love it. So we're happy to continue to provide it.
A few years ago, I did a fundraiser with a group of my friends, and we got together, and on our social medias, we promoted this, and we raised something like $1,500, where we bought basketballs, soccer balls, volleyballs, and we donated them to the Boys and Girls Club. This was when I still lived in Florida, the Boys and Girls Club of Orlando. And I was thinking about trying to do something like that again this upcoming year with baseball equipment. And I was trying to talk to you about, well, what if we raised a bunch of money, we got a bunch of baseball equipment, and we tried to send it over so maybe some of these kids wouldn't have to have the intense startup costs. But there are some issues with that, right?
Yeah. First off, that's awesome that you did that. We used to do something just like that. We would get donated equipment and we would collect it and we would ship it over. And when I say ship it over, like there were times where I had to take a 500-pound drum of equipment and bring it to the port. Very weird experience being the only Honda Accord on the loading docks. But we've done that. And what we found was a couple of things. And the reason we don't do that anymore is because, number one, a drum of equipment, for example, is too much. We sent something over in like 2013, and then in 2016, the drum of equipment magically reappeared, and it was only half empty. So we learned pretty quickly from experiences like that, like, don't send 500 pounds of equipment. It's too much. It's very costly. It takes a lot of time, a lot of manpower and bandwidth to get that stuff. And in the end, there's simply not enough baseball on the island of Ireland to warrant that. And if there was, you still can't distribute that. It puts a lot of pressure on the people receiving it to get that stuff to a new home. And it's not something we wanted to be, like the people that drop 500 pounds of equipment on you, like, hey, here you go, have fun, because then they have to figure out, how am I going to get this to the people that need it? And then it's their problem, not yours. And so we didn't want to do that. The other part of it is the type of equipment is important because, if first of all, if it's rusted or if it's not in good shape, so if it's used equipment, the kids don't want that, first of all. And the other part of it is you don't want to have too many helmets or too much catcher's gear. Each team only needs 4 helmets or 5 helmets, and they maybe need 2 sets of catcher's gear. And so if you start sending that kind of stuff in bulk, that's just a lot of stuff. And the other thing is, the way I just described how we approach the game and teaching it, we don't really use a lot of that stuff. We use gloves and bats as like something that we introduce to the kids after they've experienced baseball and wiffle ball and the training of, hitting, throwing, and catching. Once they've experienced that and they've shown some interest in adeptness in doing those things, then we introduce a glove. Like, we don't want to put a glove on a kid's hand if he's just not able to catch a ball with 2 hands. And so what kind of balls are we using? We're not using hard balls at first. We're using wiffle balls, plastic balls. We use like the Jugs light flight balls. These are kind of specialized things. And then we introduce like the hard balls and the metal bats down the road, and dumping 500 pounds of that, or even, a couple of shipments of that can confuse it. And suddenly you've got some kids that have hard balls and metal bats, and some kids that are using wiffle ball bats and still in the learning the game and learning to love the game phase. And then the other thing is that's really interesting. And it's really only kind of come online in the last like 5 or 6 years is, if you want to spend, let's say $1,000 on something like this, it's far more cost effective to spend it by buying the equipment locally in Europe and having it shipped either from Germany, the Netherlands, or the UK. Obviously, for the programs, Belfast, shipping from the UK is optimal. In EU country, shipping to Dublin is optimal. So when we do like our small grant funding for the Irish Youth Baseball Program, we, rather than sending any equipment over and dealing with customs or shipping costs or anything like that, we ask them, would you like a transfer of money, or would you like us to purchase something for you? And if so, what is it? And we'll find it And so there are websites for sporting goods companies in Germany, the UK, the Netherlands, and I think Italy. But we can find it. If you need a catcher's helmet, we can get that to you. It usually takes a day or two, whereas shipping could take a couple of weeks. And the other part of it is if you're shipping, FedEx or UPS, yeah, that'll take about a week, maybe less. Well, we were actually shipping stuff. It was like the shipments were that heavy. And so somebody had to go down to the docks and claim it. And so there was customs issues and things like that. We got through it and everything was great. It was net positive. But we looked at it and we just said, there's got to be a more efficient way to do this. So that's why we encourage our members to do online fundraising, and we can help set that up and everything. And then that money is best used to purchase the equipment that's needed, or in some cases to do a direct transfer. So if we send €250 to a club in Dublin, they know best how to spend that money. So they may not need a catcher's helmet, but they may need some help with the cost of uniforms, or helmets, or things like that. Or they may just need that money because they know that they're going to be under budget. So what we really learned is that the clubs themselves really know better than anyone what they need. So a club in Belfast may need a catcher's helmet, and a club in Dublin may need the funding just, for uniforms, or maybe they just know that they need the money to meet their budget to, cover everything from field fees to equipment. And they know better than us how that money should be spent. But certainly in terms of just, if we're talking about the best way to get equipment in the hands of kids in Ireland, it's to raise the money here. And that's what we try to do, is we really work at trying to, educate the fans here, especially the ones that are Irish American, about the needs of the kids over there and how hard it is to play the sport over there. And just say, look, if you got $5 or $20, donate it. And if we get enough people to do that, we can continue to fund these clubs and these programs. And it's the same for our school program too. We have a collection of things, and as balls disappear or batting tees get destroyed, we find a local supplier in Europe and we get that stuff to the schools. And so it's just a lot easier to not have to ship things, thousands and thousands of miles, when it doesn't need to be that way. And it's much more efficient to not do it like that.
So just very quickly, we only have a couple minutes left. Before I go, I wanted to ask you about the Irish American Baseball Hall of Fame. Much like the Wolfhounds and sending coaches over to Ireland, it was a busy summer of inductions. Jim Palmer, Whitey Ford, you mentioned. Now, where are we moving forward with the Irish American Baseball Hall of Fame? And it can just be a very quick overview.
We're still looking for a home for the hall. And in the meantime, that's not an easy thing to do as we expected. But what we've decided to do, and we've been doing it for a few years, is to just keep, exploring the ancestry of guys that played and coached and managed and worked in the game, journalists and executives and everything. And recognize their contributions by doing inductions. And we've been trying to do these inductions primarily at ballparks, minor league ballparks, major league ballparks, and also had to have a really robust and dynamic social media presence, because, we want people to know who's in the hall. We want people to know who's going in the hall, and we want our members to be part of the process. The one thing that's kind of evolving is how we induct people, and when we induct people. What we've done in the past is that members nominate, and then our gold level members then vote, and then that vote is reviewed by a committee and things like that. What we're going to, and then the inductions are announced on St. Patrick's Day. What we found is announcing the inductions on St. Patrick's Day is a great time to do it, but it's also a time where we're doing a ton of stuff with parades and things like that. And there's a lot of Irish news out there. So it's not, there are good and bad reasons why, it works and doesn't work or could work better. So I think what we're going to do moving forward is just allow our members to have a rolling nomination process. If you feel like somebody needs to be considered or has been overlooked, you can post it in the members' website. It can be discussed. It could be considered, again, by the Hall of Fame Steering Committee. And then rather than doing a vote, the first step is really to reach out to that player or their family and to see, what the level of interest is. Are they proud of their Irish roots? In some cases, it's obvious that they are. Like everybody knew, Jim Palmer was really proud to find out that he was Irish when he found out about his birth parents. And there are times where somebody, just wasn't too familiar with their roots, didn't really care either way, and that's not a bad thing. It's just their choice. But we need to know that. And so once our members say, hey, like, let's look at this guy, he's Irish, or is he Irish? And we investigate, and they are. The next step is really to reach out to them, and then to reach out to the club or a club that they're affiliated with. Like when we reached out to the Red Sox about inducting Wade Boggs, they were very accommodating, very interested in having Wade up there to do it at Fenway Park. Unfortunately, it rained, but we did induct him at Fenway. We weren't able to do it prior to a game because their game was rained out. But you need several things to happen. The person's got to have some connection to the Irish community. They have to be deserving. They have to be interested, and we have to find a place to induct them. Now, until we get the Hall its next home, we're kind of, I don't want to say at the mercy of, but we're working in conjunction with clubs to find the right time and the right club and the right place to do it. That's the way we're going to move forward. And so, we'll continue, and members should definitely visit the members' website. And if you've got somebody that you'd like to see in the Hall, or if you like somebody to be in the Hall, but you're not even sure how Irish they are or if they are Irish, we can look into that. So, just post it. Don't send emails, because those get lost too easily, and it doesn't allow other members to contribute to the discussion and the journey of kind of figuring out who's going to go in next. So I would invite everybody who's not a member to join, and everybody who is a member to visit the members' website and to join that discussion.
And I would actually like to second that, because, pardon my French, but the past couple weeks, I have been busting my butt to put content on that members' website. So if everybody wants to head over there, we're trying to start some fun conversations, and we're trying to, just to continue to talk Ireland, Irish heritage, baseball, a little bit of everything. And as we get into playoff season coming up and all that kind of stuff, hell, if you want to talk Notre Dame football, we can do all that on the community network, and it's a really great place for us to make sure that we're all staying together as a community.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the members' website is we're all, interested in baseball in Ireland, but the members' website is really a place to talk, like you said, Notre Dame football, music, college football in general. Movies, talk about your latest trip to Ireland, ask for advice if you're going to Ireland for the first time. That's what it's all about. And also suggesting members or, future inductees to the Hall. And I should mention that the latest inductee, Pat Murphy of the Brewers, was actually somebody that you brought up a couple of years ago in a phone call to me. And you just did it on, kind of, I'm sure you meant it, but it wasn't the topic of the phone call. And I got off the phone. I talked to Tim Carr. I said, "Could we look into Pat Murphy and his ancestry?" And I believe his ancestors are from County Louth, and that was something that we didn't know. And obviously, his track record as a manager is outstanding. So he deserves to be in, and he is now. So thanks to you. And that's the kind of discussion we want to bring to the members' website. So it's not a phone call, it's not an email, it's not a suggestion that I might forget about, or somebody might hear, and maybe Sean Clancy is thinking, hey, we should put this guy in, or somebody mentioned it, and then if there's no way to discuss it with other members in real time, then it could be forgotten, and so we want to preserve that, but also, just like you said, just engender more conversations about Irish culture, Irish history, and just other cultural things in the U.S. that may have very little to do with Ireland. Maybe you just saw a minor league game and or the Savannah Bananas or whatever, and you want to talk about it. It's all welcome there, and we'd love to see all of our members over there.
John, congratulations on a very successful summer, and let's hope for just as successful a fall.
I'll take it. Thanks, Rick. Always great to talk to you.
I'm your host, Rick Becker, and this has been episode 121 of the Irish Baseball Podcast.